Welcome back to another episode of Tidal Flooding Talk, brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. It is the meteorologist crew for today. We have Dan Skeldon over at WFMZ in Allentown, PA. I'm Joe Martucci. Dan, happy summer. There's many ways to describe summer, but we know one of the ways is Memorial Day weekend is here.
And that's usually the gold standard for describing summer in any coastal community, right? Memorial Day weekend, that's the kickoff to summer. You got the peak over the holiday weekend, then a little bit of a reprieve where maybe it's back to late spring. And then, of course, summer season kicks into full gear a few weeks beyond that.
One thing that I actually borrowed from you, Dan, you might not know it, is that you said, you've written a few times that, Memorial Day we shiver, we sweat on 4th of July, and we shine on Labor Day. I think can I attribute that to you? I think that's from you.
That's what I've said. And yeah, absolutely. Memorial Day, is the most variable in terms of the summer holiday weekends. You're always going to be hot and humid on July 4th, usually with thunderstorms nearby. Labor Day minus hurricanes usually is your best weather bet for a summer holiday weekend. Memorial Day, it can be anywhere from 40 something and drizzly and dreary to 90 something and hot and humid. Although, like you alluded to with the shivering, it does seem to be more cool than hot on Memorial Day weekend, and you can attribute that to the cold water, of course, or the colder water along the Northeast coast.
Yeah, and but before Memorial Day this year, we had a couple of hot days, even on the sand across the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, where we are, and then Memorial Day weekend, got cool. With some rain, but we do need that rain. So happy summer to all who participate. For this episode of Tidal Flooding Talk, this is a really special episode to me. We're going to bring on New Jersey State Climatologist Dr. Dave Robinson, my weather dad, my birthday buddy, May 13th, by the way. Happy birthday to him. But he is retiring. And Dan, do you know he's been state climatologist literally as long as I've been alive?
That's amazing. That's incredible longevity and an incredible career. We can't wait to highlight today.
We absolutely can. He's laughing. I don't know if that was offensive saying that or if he was happy by me saying that. But here he is, Dr. Dave Robinson. Welcome to the show again.
Hi there, Joe and Dan. It's a pleasure to be back. And I don't know if that makes you young or me old. I think it's both.
Well, you are, I am exactly half your age right now after our most recent May 13th birthday. So take that as you'd like. But that just means you have a wealth of experience and a lot to talk about and an illustrious career.
Thank you.
When you told me you were retiring, I mean, I can't say I was surprised. I knew it was about to be a time, but I just don't know what the state climate office is without you. And we know, and you've said this before in some shows, you keep a log of how many media interviews you do. And maybe you have the number for me, but I know it's in the thousands, maybe tens thousands, something like that. He's thinking about it. But you've been such a great resource to the state in terms of getting information out, not just about, hey, here's what's going to happen tomorrow, but putting things in perspective. And that work that you've done in the Mesonet are just incredible. So we want to kind of dedicate this half hour to you and your career and your life. And, we can even talk about what's next a little bit, but we just want to say on behalf of the Tidal Flooding Talk team, thank you for being a state climatologist for 35 years.
Well, thanks. I don't know. You said you didn't know what the office would be like without me. I'm not so sure what I'm going to be like without the office. Tell my wife that. She doesn't want me coming around like a puppy dog following her. But it's been a wonderful career as a professor. As you know, I study global cryospheres, snow and ice. So that's a whole other part of my career. And then the state climate gig is something I probably would have wanted to be when I grew up if I knew about it growing up in Bergen County many decades ago.
Well, you kind of took the answer out of my first question, which is, did you think you wanted to be state climatologist? And the answer is yes. But let's just get into this, because you kind of alluded to this. State climatologist is just part of what you do. I think this is the most famous part of what you do, but it's just part of a day in the life of Dave Robinson.
Yeah, in New Jersey, it is. But outside of New Jersey, I'm a snowman, basically. I've had the wonderful good fortune of working on national assessments, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change internationally. I've been studying snow, primarily some sea ice, for decades, going back to college and grad school years, and made many colleagues across the globe, and have had the chance to travel there. But Jersey's home. Jersey's home.
Yeah.
So it's been just wonderful to be able to represent and speak for the state all these 35 years as state climatologist.
Why don't you tell us, just give us an overview. What is your journey to the state climate office? What was your career like before that? You said you had an interest in weather. You grew up in New Jersey. So, were roads pointing towards being state climatologist aside from your interest in it?
No, I remember my first week, age myself, my first week of kindergarten, Hurricane Donna came blowing through the state. And if anyone wants to look, that was September of 19.
Okay.
Following winter, we had 3 10-inch plus snowstorms. Maybe that interested me. I remember, I was shorter then, but the snow was above my head in drifts. And like you and so many, Dan, and so many others, we just were infected with this bug as young kids. But I didn't know it would be a career path. I started keeping weather records for part of a 4th grade assignment. I still have that yellowed sheet of paper with the obs, and I still write them by hand besides managing a network. But here's my nightly by hand. I know, old fashioned.
That's all right.
But I always had that interest. 6th grade, I was the weatherman in the classroom, and I went to college, thought I might do environmental law.
Really?
And got turned on to geology through a freshman series of courses, became a geology major. Dickinson College out in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And then, but I grew up in Bergen County, up in Tenafly in Bergen County. And I was doing soft rock geology, geomorphology, hydrology. I did a senior thesis on Antarctic sea ice and looked at the co-op records of Carlisle, Pennsylvania for 80 years and did my first publication that went out to libraries of South Central Pennsylvania, all as an undergrad geology major. And then went off to grad school after working up at the Lamont Doherty. Now it's called Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. It used to be Geologic Observatory. It's part of Columbia University. I worked there for a year after a college summer internship, and then stayed on there, got supported and stayed on for grad school at Columbia. And then 4 years as a research scientist there on soft money, generating my own research funds. And then finally said, maybe I'll apply for a teaching position. I come from a family of educators, and applied at Rutgers, and I got the position. And that was in 88 for anyone keeping score. And I became a professor in the Department of Geography at Rutgers as a physical geographer. While there doing my snow research, teaching, and whatever, I knew there was a state climate office by that time. And my predecessor came to me 3 years after getting to Rutgers and said, I'm taking early retirement. I'm going to recommend you to the dean, who via a decree of Governor Byrne in 1978, I think, said that the state climatologist, which had been a federal position and it was abolished, should be located at the state university through the Agricultural Experiment Station. So that was my appointment as state climatologist, and they haven't been able to get rid of me since. And serving under many a dean, many a governor, although it's apolitical, not a political appointment, which has been wonderful. And I've had no pushback politically, and I'm eternally grateful for that. We're a very progressive, educated state when it comes to that. And it's just been a blast, learning more, helping people make decisions. That's what we do. We provide weather information, climate information, expertise on the climate of the state so people can make decisions, whether it's Office of Emergency Management, where I spoke this morning, or whether it is the Department of Agriculture, where we worked on data for the hard freeze we had back on April 21st. And the governor has just released an emergency statement regarding that. along the coast tourism industry. I talked to a business reporter for a coastal newspaper this week who I've talked to for years about the upcoming summer season. And then he always calls me at the end of the season. So you can see the wide variety of people I've gotten to meet. And I've learned about blueberries, cranberries, tourism industry, transportation industry, emergency management, of course, and so on. So I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity.
Awesome. We're going to take our first break, and then we'll come right back here on Tidal Flooding. Base flood elevation is the level floodwaters are expected to reach in a major storm. Building below it puts your home at risk. Building just 1 foot above it can significantly lower flood insurance costs and reduce flood damage. And don't forget to elevate mechanical equipment like air conditioners and generators. Small changes can make a big difference. This message is brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. And we are back here. This is a quick message for our Tidal Flooding Talk listeners. Tidal flooding has increased over time, but there's a smart program that can help your town fight back and save you money on flood insurance. It's called CRS, or the Community Rating System. Here's how it works. The CRS is run by FEMA, the folks who handle big emergencies. It's voluntary. Towns choose to join. And when a community does extra things to lower flood risk, they get a better rating. You can get discounts up to 45% off of your flood insurance policies. And we have 2 towns that are New Jersey Coastal Coalition, Avalon and Sea Isle City, that earn 35% off. That's a class 3, and many others that enjoy discounts as well. So you can thank the New Jersey Coastal Coalition and your community partners for that. Dan, back over to you.
All right, Dave. I mean, I guess my question is, what sparked the retirement? Like, I mean, you love what you do. It shows in every interview you do. It shows in every Tidal Flooding Talk you've done. How hard is it to make that decision and to leave a job that you have loved for decades and decades? So what was the trigger?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dan. Age. If someone did the math with Donna, I just turned 71 last week when Joe turned that younger age. Yes. And I'm grateful. I'm healthy, blessed with good genes, and so on and so forth.
Good hair too.
But yeah, I got it all. But my wife and I like to travel. 60-hour weeks. I'm up at my desk here in my study till 9:30 most nights and weekends quite often. No one's pushing me to do it. I don't have a clock on me, but it just came to the point where, I hit 70, 71, and it just made sense that I've done enough budgets. I've done enough this, done that. I want more time with my wife, 5 grandkids, and just have a healthy, active 70s. So but it's bittersweet.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. I mean, as I said earlier, it's part of my identity in many respects because I've held it so long. But I'll be fine. But people, how often do people say, "Oh, I wish I retired 5 years earlier or 10 years earlier"? I don't know.
Follow up then too, Dave. What would be, like, using your decades of experience, what would be the number one piece of advice to your predecessor? Big shoes to fill. I know it's cliche, but I think it's absolutely true in this case. What would be like parting advice or wisdom you can say to the person that follows you?
Wow, that's
Can we announce who it is too while we're here?
Yeah, my successor is going to be Dr. John Crasting. He is at the NOAA Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Lab in Princeton for the last 15 plus years. But he's a Jersey guy. He got his bachelor's and PhD in meteorology / atmospheric science at Rutgers. So he bleeds scarlet like Joe. And he's just excited to just do kind of a mid-ish career shift over to do this. I would tell him to just embrace the opportunities that come forward with a position like this. Every week we get asked a question or a request from the media, from a state agency. We got asked about our network and putting a couple weather stations where they're digging the tunnel, the new rail tunnel into New York City just this week. to explore the idea of putting a couple weather stations there to help them monitor safety conditions there. We've put in information to the governor years back on the Meadowlands climate in summer. Now we know, we've never been told directly, helped to generate the World Cup bid that they won. And we did something for the Super Bowl back in 2016 or whatever. I'm a sports geek, so I've just loved doing those things. But embrace that, Dan. That's all I can say is take on all comers and do the best you can to help them out.
So I'll just say, Dr. Crasting's great. I've known him for a while. I don't know him as well as I know you, but I know him. But he actually texted me today talking about the heat that we had before Memorial Day, and then we started talking about AI, and we started talking about coastal things. So, and he's media savvy. He worked in media for a period of time too. So I think he'll carry that torch really well. So I think it's a great choice, to have Phil in your shoes, and hopefully be state climatologist for the next 35 years. I was going to ask, are you at this point the longest active state climatologist? And what do you get for that? Are you like the Yoda when you go to the state climate meetings, the wise one? What happens?
I get kidded a lot with.
Okay.
Yes, I am by 8 years the longest serving state climatologist now, but it also makes me the longest serving on record historically across the nation. So, persistence in this case. But, the Ripken or the Garrick or whatever, although they hit for a higher average than me, I think.
Well, as you say, right? You're not, you leave the hard part, the forecasting, to us. You're always looking back.
I think we should make that clear that the state climate office, while a meteorologist coming in, and the assistant state climatologist, Matt Gerbush, has a master's in meteorologist, and he'll be staying on. We don't forecast the weather. If you look at our website with our Mesonet, we use National Weather Service forecasts and put that alongside our observations. Like I said, it keeps us out of trouble. Hopefully, I like to say climatologists make predictions on timescales to which they can't be held accountable. But people still remember. But you guys get instant gratification if your forecast is right. We won't talk about the forecast if it goes wrong.
Don't
truly,
talk about my Memorial Day weekend forecast.
Yeah, we've been very careful to keep that distinction. Sure, I get asked on campus about Rutgers Day and the weather, or commencement at times, or other things, but I make it very clear that I'm interpreting National Weather Service forecast models. I know enough to be dangerous with meteorology, but I am not a meteorologist, never claimed to be. And there is a distinction, but over time, you can't be a good meteorologist without knowing your climate, and you can't be a good climatologist without knowing meteorology, and never should the twain stay apart. And that was the mindset early in my career. I've seen a real evolution of this, and I've sat on national committees that have attempted to co-join things better, sitting at the National Academy of Sciences on committees. And I think there's been real progress in that direction over the last 4 or 5 decades of my involvement.
Got it. All right, we're going to take our last break, and we'll come back and wrap it up here on Tidal Flooding. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly Tidal Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more.
Welcome back to this week's Tidal Flooding Talk with meteorologist Joe Martucci. I'm Dan Skeldon, saying a nice recollective look back at the long and storied career of New Jersey State Climatologist, among the many other roles he plays. Dave Robinson. Dave, we're going to do, in the spirit of meteorology, a lightning round here. Joe and I have a lot of questions for you. We want to just, take these last 5 minutes to kind of go quick with the questions and as quick as you can go with the answers. I'm going to start with number one. Miss most about your job, state climatologist.
I really think it's the interaction with people, my professional colleagues, my media colleagues, and such.
I'll go with this. Do you prefer the February storm or the January storm we just had? We'll start with an easy one.
That's not an easy one.
Ah,
You know, I guess the January storm, because it stuck around for a real long period of time.
okay.
And
Good,
I
yeah.
study snow cover, not snowstorms.
Right. The snow cover. That's true. It's a good point.
What's your favorite type of weather? It's like if you're doing an interview with somebody, are you like I love to converse, love to like talk about winter weather? Is it severe weather? Is it sea breeze fronts? And
Yeah.
what's your favorite wheelhouse weather to discuss?
Snow.
No?
It's always been snow since I was a kid. And
Okay.
imagine you get a career where you've gotten paid to study this your entire career, something you've always enjoyed.
Yeah.
So I couldn't have asked for more.
What's the most obscure climate fact in New Jersey you can think off the top of your head?
Oh my gosh. Obscure climate fact. Well, I think one that people have been mesmerized by is the two largest snowfalls on record in New Jersey. One has been considered for a long time as 34 inches in Cape May.
Yeah, that's a good one.
We have found a 34-inch storm up in the Highlands as well. So both ends of the state have had that. But that's pretty interesting
Yeah, it
along the way.
is. What's your favorite Mesonet station in New Jersey?
Boy, you know, I was at this, I have to say High Point Monument. Because
Really?
it's the
Okay.
highest point in the state. It's windier, it's colder. But I love Coastal Station too. So I would say Seagirt for the Coastal Station.
Okay.
And this past couple of weeks with the sea breezes on and off with the heat in spring, it's just amazing when you see 20 degrees changes of temperature in 10 minutes.
All right. Quick follow up on this. Where does Wallpack rank on this?
Yeah, Wallpack would be on there. That's a valley in Northwest Jersey that on calm, clear nights is much colder than most other spots. But nah, it's too quiet there. It's not windy enough at times.
Not windy enough. Okay. All right. That's fine. Oh my gosh. In that, it kind of threw off my chain of my thought. Dan, you have another one while I recollect my thoughts?
What is the biggest temperature spread you can recall, like from north to south or east to west across New Jersey?
Well, we've had some diurnal temperature ranges from the highest in the day to the lowest of the day, over 50 degrees at that aforementioned Wallpack station,
Okay.
for one. But in terms of from stem to stern in the state, well, just a couple of weeks ago, with the sea breeze, it was 50 degrees along the coastal beaches, and 30 miles inland, it was in the upper 80s. It might have hit 90. So you can see 40-degree temperature changes from the coast, 30 miles inland, or in certain conditions from North Jersey to far South Jersey if a warm front is involved. So those 40, 50-degree temperature ranges are pretty darn impressive in a state the size of New Jersey.
Sure are. Absolutely.
I guess technological change you wouldn't have anticipated when you first began State Climatologist is
The mesonets that we
Okay.
have now. We have a 70-station network that fills in the gaps between airports, and we report every 5 minutes. It's cellular communication. It's solar powered stations, so you can see and we produce products every 5 minutes to go out on the internet. Now tell me where those were in 1980 when I was in grad school.
I want to do a quick one. On your retirement, said you want to travel. Money's no object. What's your number one destination you want to go to?
Oh, we have a bucket list. Antarctica is actually one of our bucket lists. We were in Greenland last September for 2 weeks, and one of my colleagues does research there, and we got up on the ice sheet, the periphery of the ice sheet briefly, we being my wife and I, who also is an earth science teacher a long way over many, many decades. So either pole, but New Zealand, was just talking to a colleague last night about New Zealand. My wife just was telling me about friends of ours who just came back from Turkey and had a wonderful time. So We're equal opportunity for any latitude or longitude. But the
Well,
beauty of
listen,
traveling with retirement is we want to do it when it's not hot and it's not crowded.
that's true.
Yep.
September is probably a good time, right?
Yeah.
Good travel time. Kids are back in school. Awesome. Well, listen, excellent interview. Before we say our final goodbyes, let's get into the one thing we can't stop talking about, tidal flooding or otherwise. Dan, I'll start with you on this one.
I'm just going to start with, it's summer's here. After Memorial Day, my pool, which I opened in late April, reached an 82-degree temperature before Memorial Day, and I'm depressed to see it going down with the cool holiday weekend we had. So hopefully it's on the way up again.
You get a lot of sun on that pool, Dan.
It is in the sun all day.
That's great. That's
So
fantastic.
I'm hoping the 80s come back for the pool water.
Okay. I have two for this one. One, I can't stop thinking about Memorial Day weekend 2021. That will be permanently etched and scarred in my brain forever because it poured from Saturday night until Sunday night, and it was in the 50s and it was windy, but everybody was out because that's when a lot of the COVID restrictions got lifted. So it didn't matter. I had a friend of mine who waited 2 hours in Point Pleasant to get into a bar, and it was pouring and it was 51 degrees. So that's the one thing that's one thing I can't stop talking about. On a serious note, I can't stop talking about Dave Robinson here, my friend, my birthday buddy, my weather dad, has been a tremendous resource with me. We did research. Well, I should say, I worked with him as a research intern at Rutgers in 2013. Then I kind of went my separate way for a few years, and then we reconnected in Atlantic City in 2018. And I remember, and I didn't tell you this, I was pretty scared to ask you, hey, could we do a monthly show together about climate? I thought you were going to say no. You didn't. You said yes, and that really developed a nice friendship that we've had. So not only have you been a professional mentor to me, but you've been a friend of mine as well. It's always great seeing you, more virtually than I would like. We got to get in person a little more often, but maybe now that you're retired, we can. And I just want to say, I will miss you as state climatologist. I know you're not going away, but just to, not be in that position anymore really is like I said at the top, I just can't imagine. So thank you for being you and all the work that you've done and personally have helped me in my life.
Thank you for those kind words. It's been a wonderful relationship with you and getting to know Shawnee, go to your wedding and
That's right. Yes, I didn't. Yes, I forgot that detail.
and
Yes.
all. And I just had fabulous students along the way that I've had the opportunity to stay in touch with, undergrads, grad students, postdocs, and that's made it so darn rewarding. I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. So thank you for being you and being around.
All right. Hey, pleasure. All right. So for the last time with you on Tidal Flooding Talk, we appreciate Dr. Dave Robinson from coming on. You can go to njclimate.org or njweather.org for more from the State Climate Office. We'll be back with you next week with a new episode of Tidal Flooding Talk. If you like this, make sure to like, subscribe, download, wherever you get your podcast. We can find it there, and we'll talk with you soon. Take care, everybody.